The noise hit him first. Not loud, just off. A kid's voice pitched higher than normal. Strained. The sort of sound that comes from trying to hide fear. Sergeant Thomas Wright had been posted near the East Gallery for 40 minutes. Standard rotation. Standard Wednesday afternoon. The younger royals were viewing the portrait collection before family dinner. Protocol required a visible but distant presence. Near enough to react, far enough to allow privacy. He'd done this countless times, but that noise made him look up. Through the doorway, he spotted them. Prince George in his school blazer, standing beside one of the larger portraits, and Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's son from her first marriage, gesturing toward the painting, speaking, smiling. Nothing strange about that. Tom visited occasionally. Family ties. Perfectly normal, except George's posture was wrong. The boy stood too rigid, shoulders pulled slightly forward, chin tilted down, not the relaxed stance of a child hearing an interesting story. Wright held his position, but shifted his weight. Subtle, professional, just enough to get a better view through the doorway. Before we go on, make sure you hit subscribe on Crown Watch. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Now, back to what unfolded next. Tom's hand rested on George's shoulder. Still smiling, still speaking. The boy nodded once, quick, automatic. Wright had served in royal protection for 6 years. Before that, multiple tours overseas. He'd learned to read body language in situations where missing a signal could mean lives lost. And right now, every instinct he'd honed was screaming something was wrong. The hand on George's shoulder squeezed. Wright saw the boy's jaw clench, saw him try to step back. Tom's hand shifted down to George's forearm, grip firm enough that Wright could see the fingers pressing into the blazer's fabric. George said something, too soft to hear from this distance. Tom leaned closer, said something back. The smile never wavered, but his hand didn't release the arm. Wright's mind ran through protocols. This was delicate territory, intervening between a family member and a royal child. But those protocols assumed normal circumstances. They assumed the child wasn't in distress. He watched Tom's thumb press harder into George's arm. The boy's free hand clenched at his side. Another telltale sign Wright had learned to recognize. The kind of physical tension that came from wanting to pull away, but being too polite, too well trained in royal decorum to make a scene. George's eyes darted toward the doorway. For just a fraction of a second, they met Wright's. The relief in that glance was unmistakable. The silent plea. The look of a child who needed an adult to see what was happening and do something about it. That decided it. Wright made a choice. He moved forward, not running, not aggressive, just a guard checking on a situation, completely routine. He crossed the threshold into the portrait gallery. "Good afternoon, sir," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "Your Highness." Tom looked up. The smile brightened. "Afternoon, Sergeant. Just giving young George here a bit of family history. Did you know his great-great-grandmother sat for this portrait in 1948? "I did, sir." Wright's eyes went to George. The boy's face was carefully blank. Too blank for an 11-year-old who should be either bored or interested, not locked down like this. "Fascinating stuff for a history enthusiast," Tom continued. His hand remained on George's arm. "Isn't that right, George?" "Yes, sir." George's voice came out steady, practiced, the voice of a child who'd been taught perfect manners, even in uncomfortable situations. Wright took another step closer. "I apologize for interrupting. Prince George, your mother asked me to let you know she's ready for you in the drawing room." It was a lie. Princess Kate hadn't asked anything, but it gave George an exit. The boy's eyes flicked to Wright just for a second. Relief. Clear as daylight. Tom's smile tightened at the edges. "I'm sure she can wait a few more minutes. We're in the middle of an important conversation about family legacy. Aren't we, George?" His fingers tightened on George's arm. Not dramatically, just enough. George's breath caught, almost inaudible, but Wright heard it. "I'm afraid it's rather urgent, sir," Wright said, maintaining the polite fiction. Princess Kate was quite specific about the timing. Tom's eyes met his. The smile remained, but something else flickered underneath. Challenge. Testing. "Well then," Tom said slowly, "I suppose duty calls. Though I must say, George, we'll need to finish this conversation another time. There are things about the family you need to understand." Important things. His hand finally released the arm. Run along then. George didn't run. He walked, controlled, dignified. But Wright noticed the way the boy's left hand came up to rub his right forearm just briefly, then dropped. "Thank you for the history lesson, Mr. Parker Bowles," George said. "Perfect manners, perfect tone." "Of course, Your Highness, anytime." Wright stepped aside to let George pass. The boy walked toward the door, back straight, pace measured. Training, years of it. Never show weakness in public. Never let them see you're rattled. But Wright had seen, and he was going to find out why. As George disappeared down the corridor, Tom turned back to the portrait, studying it. Casual. Impressive, isn't it? The weight of history these children carry. Yes, sir. They need to understand that weight. Need to be reminded sometimes that not everyone in the family is equal. Some are born to rule. Others. He paused. Others support from the sidelines. It's important for boys like George to know the difference. Wright kept his expression neutral. "I'm sure Prince George receives excellent guidance, sir." "Oh, I'm sure he does." Tom glanced back. "Tell me, Sergeant, how long have you been in royal protection?" 6 years, sir." 6 years. So you understand protocol. You understand that family members have certain privileges when it comes to interacting with the children. There it was. The boundary being drawn. The warning being delivered with a smile. "I understand my duty is to ensure the safety of the royal family, sir. All of them." Tom's smile didn't waver. "Safety, yes. Though I wonder if interrupting a private family conversation really falls under that mandate." He adjusted his cufflinks. "Expensive. Gold. I do hope you're not the type to see threats where none exist. The Queen speaks so highly of her protection staff. It would be unfortunate if that confidence were misplaced." The threat was subtle but clear. Question this and your position becomes uncertain. Wright had been threatened before. Different contexts, different stakes. This was new territory, but the principle remained the same. You don't back down from doing what's right because someone tries to intimidate you. I appreciate your concern, sir. If you'll excuse me, I should return to my post. Of course. Do give my regards to Princess Kate. Tell her I hope George enjoyed our little talk. I'm sure we'll have many more opportunities to spend time together." Wright left the gallery, Tom's words echoing in his mind. The casual mention of future opportunities felt less like a promise and more like a threat. As he walked through the corridor, he pulled out his radio and spoke quietly to the duty officer. "This is Wright. I need to note a security observation for the log. Timestamp 1444 hours. He'd learned long ago that documentation started immediately, not after the fact when memories could be questioned. Every word of that conversation was going into his incident report. But first he needed to check on George. The corridor stretched ahead, portraits of past monarchs watching from the walls. Wright increased his pace. Not quite running, professional urgency. He reached the drawing room in less than a minute. Princess Kate was there, speaking with one of her staff about tomorrow's schedule. George stood near the window, looking out at the gardens. His posture had relaxed slightly, but his right hand kept returning to his left forearm. Rubbing, unconscious gesture. Wright approached Kate. Protocol demanded he go through her first. "Your Highness, my apologies for interrupting." Kate turned. She had the gift of making even a routine interruption feel like the most important thing happening. "Sergeant Wright, is everything all right? I wanted to check on Prince George, ma'am. There was an interaction in the East Gallery that concerned me." Her expression shifted. Not obviously, just a tightening around the eyes. The look of a mother who's heard something that triggers protective instincts. "What kind of interaction?" Wright kept his voice low. "Professional. Mr. Parker Bowles was showing Prince George the portrait collection. Physical contact that appeared to cause discomfort. I intervened and brought Prince George here." Kate's gaze went to her son. George was still looking out the window, but his shoulders had tensed. He'd heard. "George," Kate said softly. "Come here, please." The boy turned, walked over. That same controlled pace. "Yes, Mum." "Sergeant Wright says you were speaking with Tom. How did that go?" "Fine." The word came out too quickly. "He was just telling me about the family history." "Did he hurt you?" George's eyes flicked to Wright, then back to his mother. The internal calculation was visible. Tell the truth and create a problem, or say nothing and deal with it alone. Wright had seen this before. Different situations, same dilemma, the decision point where someone chooses whether to speak up or stay silent. He grabbed my arm, George said finally. Quiet. Not hard, just firm. He wanted me to pay attention to what he was saying about knowing my place in the family. Kate's face went very still, the kind of still that comes before action. Show me your arm. George hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. The marks weren't dramatic, just red pressure points where fingers had dug in. They'd fade in an hour, but they were there, visible proof. Kate looked at Wright. You saw this happen? I saw Mr. Parker Bowles maintaining physical contact with Prince George, despite the prince attempting to step away, ma'am. I saw Prince George's discomfort. I intervened on that basis. Thank you. She turned to her staff member. Please find Prince William and tell him I need to speak with him immediately, and ask Captain Wells to come to my office within the hour. The staff member nodded and left quickly. Kate's attention returned to George. You did nothing wrong. You understand that? Yes, Mum. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, I don't care who they are. You tell me or your father immediately. I know, He's the Queen's son. I didn't want to cause problems. You won't be causing problems. He will. Kate's voice was calm, but carried an edge Wright recognized. He'd heard that tone from commanders before they authorized decisive action. She looked at Wright again. I want a full written report of what you observed, every detail. Timeline, exact words if you remember them, physical descriptions of the contact. I want it on my desk in 2 hours. Yes, ma'am. And Sergeant Wright, thank you for paying attention, for trusting your instincts. Wright nodded. My duty, ma'am. He left the drawing room and headed back toward the East Gallery. His mind was already organizing the report. Timestamps, observations, direct quotes, the kind of documentation that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. But what Wright didn't know yet was that Tom Parker Bowles had already made 3 phone calls. One to his mother, one to his private attorney, and one to a journalist he'd cultivated over the years. The counteroffensive was already beginning. As Wright walked through the palace corridors, he noticed subtle changes in how staff were behaving. 2 housekeepers who normally chatted with him simply nodded and moved past. A footman he'd known for 3 years suddenly became very interested in adjusting a painting. Word was spreading faster than he'd anticipated. In the closed ecosystem of palace life, information moved through invisible networks. A whispered word in the servants' hall, a text between security officers, a knowing glance exchanged over afternoon tea service. By the time Wright reached the security office to begin his report, his supervising officer was waiting. Captain Richard Wells, 20-year veteran of royal protection, stood with arms crossed, and an expression that said this was about to become complicated. Sergeant Wright, my office, now. Wright followed him into the small room. Wells closed the door, sat behind his desk, didn't invite Wright to sit. I just received a call from the Queen's private secretary, Wells said. Apparently, there's been a misunderstanding in the East Gallery. Tom Parker Bowles is quite upset. Claims you interrupted a private family conversation and made unfounded accusations about inappropriate contact. Sir, I made no accusations. I observed concerning behavior and acted to. Did you or did you not physically interpose yourself between Mr. Parker Bowles and Prince George? I entered the gallery and offered Prince George an excuse to leave a situation that was clearly causing him distress. Yes, sir. Wells leaned back. The Queen's secretary says Tom was simply being an uncle figure, giving George some perspective on royal duty. He says George was perfectly fine until you created an awkward situation. With respect, sir, Prince George has marks on his arm from where Mr. Parker Bowles gripped him. Princess Kate has seen them. She's requested a full report. That stopped Wells cold. Princess Kate saw marks? Yes, sir. I witnessed the interaction. Princess Kate confirmed physical evidence, and she's asked for documentation within 2 hours. Wells processed this. The political calculation was written on his face. Queen Camilla's son on one side, future queen consort on the other. A sergeant in the middle trying to do his job. Write your report, Wells said finally. Every detail. But write, sir, this is going to get messy. Are you absolutely certain about what you saw? Wright met his eyes. I'm certain, sir. Then write it up. I'll make sure it reaches the right people. Wright left the office and found an empty desk, opened his laptop, started typing. He didn't know it yet, but what he was about to document would spark the biggest internal crisis the royal family had faced in months. Not because of what Tom Parker Bowles had done, but because of who would try to protect him and how far they'd be willing to go. The truth was about to become very expensive for everyone involved. Wright's fingers moved across the keyboard. Years of military documentation had taught him precision. Facts, timeline, no interpretation. Let the evidence speak. 1442 hours. Observed Prince George and Mr. Thomas Parker Bowles in East Gallery. Prince George's body language indicated discomfort. Shoulders forward, head down, minimal verbal response. Subject appeared to be attempting to maintain distance while remaining polite. He paused, recalling the exact sequence. 443 hours. Observed Mr. Parker Bowles place hand on Prince George's shoulder, then move to grip the prince's right forearm. Contact maintained approximately 40 seconds, despite Prince George attempting to step back twice. Pressure appeared significant based on visible finger placement and subject's physical reaction. The details mattered. In his experience, vague reports could be dismissed. Specific observations were harder to refute. He documented every word of the conversation. Tom's comments about knowing your place in the family, the veiled threats delivered with a smile, the way George had rubbed his arm afterward. As he typed, his phone buzzed. Text from Marcus Reed, another guard stationed near the Queen's apartments. Heads up, Tom PB just spent 20 minutes with HM. Came out looking satisfied. Something's brewing. Wright set down his phone and kept typing. He'd expected this. Tom would go straight to his mother. Camilla would protect her son. That was predictable. What mattered was getting the facts documented before the narrative could be shaped. His radio crackled. All units, be advised. Media presence reported at the South Gate. Royal Communications is handling. Maintain normal protocols. Wright's jaw tightened. Less than 2 hours since the incident, and already the press was circling. Someone had tipped them off. He had a good idea who. 30 minutes into writing, another text. Different number. Princess Kate's private secretary. HR requests you bring preliminary report to her office immediately. Don't wait for the full 2 hours. Wright saved his document. Printed 2 copies. One for Kate, one for his file. He stood, straightened his uniform, and headed toward Kate's office. The corridor felt longer than usual. Wright passed 2 other guards. Both nodded, but said nothing. Word was already spreading. In the closed world of palace staff, information moved faster than official channels. Kate's office door was open. She stood by the window, phone to her ear. Her voice was calm but firm. Yes, I understand protocol. I'm telling you what happened to my son. I expect it to be taken seriously. Pause. I don't care what Tom says happened. There are marks on George's arm. There's a witness, and I want this addressed before dinner tonight. She ended the call, saw Wright in the doorway. Come in, close the door. Wright handed her the preliminary report. 3 pages. She read quickly. Professional, focused. When she looked up, her expression had hardened. This matches exactly what George told me, including the comments about knowing his place. She set the report down. Do you know what Tom told his mother? No, ma'am. He says he was giving George a friendly history lesson. That George was engaged and interested until you interrupted and created an awkward situation by implying something inappropriate was happening. He claims you embarrassed him in front of his nephew and made George feel like he'd done something wrong. Wright kept his face neutral. That's not what I observed, ma'am. I know it's not. But Tom's version is already circulating. The Queen's private secretary called William 10 minutes ago, suggesting this was an overzealous guard misreading a family interaction. They're framing this as you being the problem. I expected that, ma'am. Kate studied him. You did this knowing it would put a target on your back. I did it because Prince George needed someone to intervene. William is on his way. He's bringing Captain Wells. We need to establish facts before this becomes a he-said, she-said situation. She glanced at the report again. You mentioned George tried to step away. How many times? Twice, ma'am. Clear backward movement. Mr. Parker Bowles maintained his grip both times, and his comments about family hierarchy. Direct quote, "Some are born to rule, others support from the sidelines. It's important for boys like George to know the difference. Delivered while maintaining physical contact. Kate's jaw tightened. He was reminding a child that he doesn't really belong, that his mother wasn't born royal, that his position is somehow conditional. She looked up. "This wasn't the first time, was it? Ma'am?" Tom's made comments before. Little things. George mentioned once that Uncle Tom liked to tell him stories about real royals versus newcomers. I thought it was just family ribbing. I didn't realize. Her voice trailed off. The regret of a mother who'd missed warning signs. The door opened. Prince William entered, followed by Captain Wells. William's expression was controlled, but Wright could see the anger underneath. This was a father who'd just learned someone hurt his son. "Sergeant Wright," William said. "Walk me through exactly what you saw." Wright repeated everything. William listened without interrupting. When Wright finished, William turned to Wells. "Captain, have there been other incidents involving Tom Parker Bowles and the children?" Wells hesitated. The kind of hesitation that meant yes, but it's complicated. "There have been observations, sir. Nothing that rose to the level of formal reporting, but staff have noted that Mr. Parker Bowles tends to be somewhat heavy-handed in his interactions, particularly with Prince George." Heavy-handed how? Physical guidance that's more forceful than necessary. Standing too close. Conversations that seem intended to make Prince George uncomfortable about his position in the family. 3 separate guards have mentioned it informally over the past 6 months. Again, nothing that crossed clear lines until today. William's hands clenched briefly, then relaxed. Control reasserted. "I want statements from any staff who've witnessed previous interactions. Today, I want Sergeant Wright's report, filed officially with royal protection. And I want Tom barred from unsupervised contact with any of the children until this is resolved." "Sir," Wells said carefully, "that last request will need to go through the king, and given that Tom is the Queen's son, then it goes through my father. I'll speak with him directly." Kate stood. "William, Camilla's already called Charles. Tom's version is what he's heard first." William's expression darkened. "Then I'd better correct the record immediately. Where is my father?" "In his study with the afternoon briefing papers." "Good. He and I need to have a conversation about accountability." William looked at Wright. "You did the right thing, Sergeant. Whatever happens next, remember that." "Thank you, sir." Captain Wells. "I want Sergeant Wright's duty assignments kept normal. No sudden transfers, no disciplinary reviews. He acted appropriately, and I won't have him punished for protecting my son." Wells straightened. "Understood, sir." William strode toward the door, Kate following. As they left, Wright heard William say, "If Camilla thinks she can sweep this under the rug to protect Tom, she's badly mistaken. This ends today." The door closed behind them. Wright and Wells stood in silence for a moment. "You've just made yourself the center of a royal family civil war," Wells said quietly. "I documented what I saw, sir. I know. And you were right to do it. But being right doesn't always protect you from the fallout." Wells moved toward the door. "Finish your full report. Make it bulletproof. Because every word will be examined by lawyers, by family members, by people looking for any excuse to discredit it." Wright returned to his desk and his laptop. He expanded his preliminary report, adding context, clarifying observations, building an unassailable timeline. As he worked, his phone continued to buzz with messages. Most from fellow guards offering quiet support. A few from staff he barely knew, warning him to watch his back. One from an unknown number. "You should have minded your business. Families deal with family matters. You've made a big mistake." Wright deleted it without responding. Empty threats from faceless critics didn't concern him. What concerned him was ensuring George's safety going forward, and that required documentation that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. An hour later, his full report was complete. 7 pages. Detailed, specific, supported by physical evidence and corroborating statements. He saved 3 copies. One for the official file, one for Princess Kate, one for his personal records. Something told him he'd need his own copy before this was over. As Wright prepared to submit the report, his radio crackled to life. Wells's voice, tense. "All protection units, be advised. Situation developing in the North Wing. Mr. Parker Bowles is attempting to access the family quarters. He's demanding to speak with Prince George. Princess Anne is currently blocking access. Sergeant Wright, report to North Wing immediately. Wright was moving before Wells finished speaking. He grabbed his radio and responded. En route. ETA 90 seconds. He moved quickly through the corridors. Staff pressed against walls to let him pass. Word had clearly spread. Something was happening. Something big. Other guards fell in behind him. Marcus Reed, Sarah Chen, two others whose names he didn't catch. Automatic response. When one guard called for backup, you came running. They reached the North Wing in under 2 minutes. The scene was exactly as reported. Tom Parker Bowles stood in the corridor, face flushed, voice raised. Princess Anne stood between him and the door to George's private quarters. Arms crossed, expression carved from ice. You don't have the authority to keep me from my nephew, Tom was saying. I'm family. I have every right to see him and clear up this ridiculous misunderstanding. You have the right, I grant you, Anne said, her voice cutting through his bluster like a blade. And right now, that's none whatsoever. Tom saw Wright approaching. His expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. William, thank God. Oh wait, it's the guard who caused this entire mess. Tell me, Sergeant, do you feel proud of yourself? Turning a family against itself? Wright said nothing. He took position beside Anne, professional, ready. Tom's eyes narrowed. Silent now? Not so bold when you're not ambushing people in portrait galleries. Mr. Parker Bowles, Anne said icily, I suggest you leave before this situation deteriorates further. I'm not going anywhere until I speak with George. That boy needs to understand that what happened was a simple misunderstanding. That this guard, he jabbed a finger toward Wright, has blown everything out of proportion. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. William and Kate appeared, moving quickly. Tom's face brightened with false warmth. William, thank God. Your aunt and this overzealous guard are keeping me from George. I just want 5 minutes to clear things up with him, to make sure he knows there are no hard feelings. William stopped 3 feet away. His voice was cold, controlled. There's nothing to clear up, Tom. My son told me exactly what happened. I've seen the marks on his arm. I've read Sergeant Wright's report. You hurt my child. Kids bruise easily. I was just making a point about him knowing his place. Kate's voice was sharp. About some family members being more royal than others. About my son needing to understand that his mother wasn't born into this life. Tom's eyes flickered. I was providing historical context. George needs to understand the weight of his position, the responsibilities that come with being future king. Someone has to teach these children about tradition and hierarchy. Someone does, William said quietly. That someone is me and Kate, not you. I'm his uncle. I'm family. You're the Queen's son from a previous marriage. That doesn't give you the right to put hands on my child or make him feel inferior. What happened next shocked everyone present. The door behind Anne opened. George stood there in casual clothes, looking smaller without his school uniform. His eyes went to Tom, then to his father. The boy's face was pale but determined. Dad, I heard shouting. William's expression softened immediately. It's all right, George. Come here, please. George walked to his father's side. Careful steps, deliberate. He didn't look at Tom. That small avoidance spoke volumes. Tom's face shifted, forced warmth replacing the anger. George, I just wanted to apologize if I was too enthusiastic earlier. Sometimes I forget you're still young, that you might not understand adult conversations about responsibility and legacy. No hard feelings, I hope? George looked up at his father. Silent question. William nodded once. Permission granted to speak freely. George turned back to Tom, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. You hurt my arm, George said. Not by accident, on purpose. Because you wanted me to pay attention to what you were saying about knowing my place in the family. George, I never meant. You do mean it. You always mean it. The words came faster now. 11 years of carefully stored observations spilling out. You smile when you say things about Mum not being real royalty. You smile when you remind me that Charlotte and Louis are less important because they're younger. You smile when you tell me I need to remember that some family members matter more than others. But it's not funny. And today, when I tried to walk away, you wouldn't let me. Silence fell over the corridor. The truth delivered by a child, impossible to dismiss, because it carried the weight of accumulated hurt. Tom's mask slipped. Just for a second, Wright saw something ugly flash across his face. Resentment. Anger at being called out by a boy who was supposed to accept the treatment and stay quiet. "You're being dramatic," Tom said, the warmth gone from his voice now, replaced by something harder. "I was teaching you valuable lessons about the reality of royal life. Perhaps if you were less sensitive, if you'd inherited more of your great-grandmother's steel instead of your mother's common." "That's enough." William's voice cut through like a whip crack. "You're done here. Finished. Captain Wells, please escort Mr. Parker Bowles out of the family wing. He's not to return without express written permission from myself or Princess Kate." Tom's face flushed crimson. "You can't ban me from my own family's home. The Queen doesn't rule this household. I do, and you've just proven exactly what kind of person you are. Bullying a child, then trying to gaslight him when he calls you out. Attacking his mother with classist nonsense, when your own behavior shows no class whatsoever." Anne stepped forward, voice like frost. "I suggest you leave now, Tom, while you still have some dignity intact. Though given what we've all just witnessed, I'm not certain how much you have left." Tom looked around, at William's set face, at Kate's protective stance beside George, at Anne's implacable wall, at the guards, watching everything. He was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and he knew it. "Fine," he said, straightening his jacket with sharp, angry movements. "But this isn't over. You're making a terrible mistake treating me like some common threat. I'm family, and families have long memories. When Camilla hears about this, when the king understands how I've been treated, you'll regret this knee-jerk reaction to a child's overreaction." He turned and walked toward the stairs, spine rigid, steps precise. Wells and two other guards followed at a professional distance, making sure he actually left. When Tom disappeared down the stairwell, the tension in the corridor broke like a released bowstring. George's composure cracked. He pressed against his father's side, suddenly looking every bit the 11-year-old child he was, instead of the composed young royal he'd been forced to be. William's arm came around him immediately, holding him close. "You're safe," William murmured. "You did nothing wrong. You were incredibly brave just now. You hear me?" "Yes," came George's muffled voice against William's jacket. "If anyone ever makes you uncomfortable again, I don't care who they are. I don't care what titles they have. You tell me immediately. Promise?" "I promise." Kate joined the embrace, her hand on George's shoulder. The three of them stood there for a moment, a family unit fortifying itself against external threats. Wright turned away, giving them privacy. Anne approached him quietly. "You started this chain reaction, Sergeant." "Yes, ma'am." "Good. It needed starting." She glanced toward where Tom had disappeared. "He's been doing this for months. Little comments, small cruelties designed to make George feel like an outsider in his own family, like he has to constantly prove himself worthy of his position because of who his mother is. Someone finally paid enough attention to stop it. Just doing my duty, ma'am." "Your duty was to maintain post and not interfere in family matters. You went beyond that." Anne studied him with those sharp eyes. "That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes both. Which was it?" Wright considered the question seriously. "I saw a child in distress, ma'am. Once I saw that, the rest became irrelevant." Anne's expression softened slightly, as much as her features ever softened. "Keep that clarity. You're going to need it. Tom will retaliate. Camilla will protect him. This is about to become very political, very messy." "I understand, ma'am." "Do you?" "Because palace politics makes military operations look straightforward. Lines get blurred. Loyalties get tested. People who support you today might distance themselves tomorrow when the pressure increases. I've seen it happen 100 times. With respect, ma'am, I've been in difficult situations before. I can handle pressure. Military pressure is different. There the enemy wears a different uniform. Here, the threat comes smiling, invites you to tea, calls you by your first name while undermining you behind closed doors." She paused, seemed to be weighing something. "But you have allies. William, Kate, myself. We'll remember what you did today. That counts for something." She walked back to William and Kate. Wright heard her say something about speaking to Charles directly, about making sure he understood the full context before Camilla shaped his perception of events. Wright checked his watch. His shift still had 3 hours to run. Protocol still mattered, even in the middle of a crisis. He keyed his radio. "This is Wright. North Wing situation resolved. Returning to normal duties." Wells' voice responded. "Copy that. Report to my office when your shift ends. We need to prep you for tomorrow." Wright resumed his post near the family quarters. Standard position, alert and professional, but his mind was already processing what would come next. Tom wouldn't accept this quietly. Men like him, used to privilege, used to deference based on family connections, didn't take being challenged well, especially not by someone they considered beneath them. The next few days would be critical. Wright pulled out his phone during a quiet moment and sent a text to his brother, a solicitor in Manchester. "Might need legal advice soon. Family matter at work escalated. Will call when I can." The response came quickly. "Standing by. Whatever you need." Wright pocketed his phone as Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis came down the corridor with their nanny, returning from afternoon activities. Charlotte saw him and smiled. "Good afternoon, Sergeant Wright." "Good afternoon, Your Highness." Such normal interactions, the daily rhythms of royal life, continuing even as battles raged behind closed doors. Whores crawled past. Wright's mind kept cycling through the incident, reviewing his actions, questioning whether he could have handled anything differently. But each time he ran through the sequence, he came to the same conclusion. George had needed help. Wright had provided it. Everything else was just consequences. At 6 o'clock, his replacement arrived. Wright briefed him quickly. Nothing unusual to report now. Family quarters secure, standard protocols in effect. He didn't mention the earlier drama. That was already spreading through the palace's invisible communication network. Wright headed to Wells's office. The captain was waiting along with 2 other people Wright didn't recognize. A woman in a dark suit, mid-40s, carrying a leather portfolio. A man about 60, gray hair, expensive watch. Lawyers. Had to be. "Sergeant Wright," Wells said. "This is Helena Marsh from the Royal Household's legal team and David Thornbury, who represents the Protective Services Division. They need to brief you on what's developing." Wright sat. His military training kicked in. Briefing mode, information absorption, tactical awareness. Marsh opened her portfolio and slid a document across the table. "We've been informed that a story is being prepared for publication tomorrow morning. The Daily Telegraph. Royal correspondent named Geoffrey Winters. Here's what we know so far." Wright scanned the page. Bullet points painted a damning picture. Anonymous palace sources. Claims that royal protection officers were becoming increasingly paranoid and overreaching their authority. Specific mention of an incident where a guard aggressively confronted a family member during a harmless interaction with Prince George. Suggestions that the guard in question had a history of overreacting to normal situations, though no specific incidents were cited. "That last part is fabricated," Thornbury said flatly. "Your record is spotless. Exemplary, actually. Multiple commendations, 0 complaints. But they're going to imply otherwise, create doubt about your judgment." "Who provided this information?" Wright asked, though he already knew. "We can't prove it definitively, but the timing points clearly to Tom Parker Bowles. He has a relationship with Winters going back several years." This story was pitched to the Telegraph within 2 hours of the gallery incident. The speed suggests it was planned, not reactive. Marsh leaned forward, her expression serious. "Here's what you need to understand. Sergeant, this isn't just about today's incident. This is about palace hierarchy and power dynamics. You intervened in a situation involving the Queen Consort's son. That creates a significant political problem. Some members of the household will want this to go away quietly. The easiest way to make it go away is to sacrifice you to preserve peace. Others," Thornbury added, "namely Prince William and Princess Kate, want this addressed properly. They're fighting to make sure you're protected, and Tom is held accountable. But it's going to be a battle, and you're caught in the middle." Wright absorbed this, his mind already shifting into defensive mode. "What do you need from me? Stick to your written statement. Don't elaborate beyond what's documented. Don't speak to media under any circumstances. not even to offer no comment. If you're approached, refer them to the Royal Communications Office. We'll handle all official responses. And unofficially, Wright asked. The lawyers exchanged glances. Marsh spoke carefully. Unofficially, prepare for your life to become very difficult for a while. Tom Parker Bowles has resources, money, connections, media relationships. He'll use them. Social media accounts will start questioning your motives. People claiming to be palace insiders will give interviews suggesting you misunderstood what you saw, that you have a pattern of overreaction. Your background will be scrutinized for anything that can be twisted to undermine your credibility. My background is clean. I'm sure it is. But they'll still look. A comment you made years ago taken out of context. A complaint from someone you knew that was resolved in your favor. They'll resurface it and imply wrongdoing. An old photo at a party. Anything to create doubt, to shift focus from what Tom did to questions about who you are. Wells spoke up. We're taking precautions. Your personnel file has been secured with restricted access. I've instructed all staff that any inquiries about you must go through me personally. Prince William has made it clear that any disciplinary action against you will be blocked by him personally. But Wright could hear it coming, could sense the shoe about to drop. But you're going to be isolated, Wells said bluntly. Other guards will distance themselves. Not because they don't believe you or don't support you, but because being associated with you becomes politically risky when they have careers and families to protect. It's self-preservation. It's ugly, but it's reality. Wright had seen it before. Different context, same mechanism. When someone becomes controversial, others create distance to protect themselves. Basic human nature, neither surprising nor particularly hurtful once you understood it. I can handle isolation, he said. There's something else, Marsh said, her voice taking on a different quality. Queen Camilla has requested a private meeting with you tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock in her sitting room. The room went quiet. A summons from the Queen Consort herself. The implications were significant. She's going to try to get you to recant, Thornbury said bluntly, or at minimum, to minimize what happened. She'll be charming, reasonable, sympathetic. She'll explain how misunderstandings occur in families, how interactions can be interpreted different ways, how perhaps you saw something that wasn't quite what you thought. I know what I saw. Then stick to that, politely, professionally, but don't let her rewrite the narrative. Don't let her convince you that protecting a child was somehow an overreaction. Thornbury pulled out another document. We've prepared talking points for you. Phrases you can use that are respectful but firm. Study these tonight. Use them tomorrow. Wright took the paper, scanned the suggested responses. Ma'am, I understand this creates difficulty, but I must report what I observed accurately. I have great respect for the royal family, which is why I take my duty to protect them seriously. I documented exactly what I witnessed and stand by that account. Professional armor, diplomatic language that couldn't be twisted later. One more thing, Marsh said. You don't have to go into that meeting alone. You have the right to have union representation present. Captain Wells has agreed to attend as your superior officer. Wright looked at Wells. The captain's expression was resolute. I've got your back on this, Wright. You did the job correctly by the book. I'm not letting you take the fall alone. They spent another hour preparing, wargaming possible questions, reviewing what Wright could and couldn't say. Marsh was thorough, anticipating angles Wright wouldn't have considered. By the time the session ended, it was past 8 o'clock. Dark outside, the palace lit by floodlights that turned the old stone golden. Wright walked to his quarters in the staff residence building. Small flat, 2 rooms, functional. He'd never bothered making it feel like home. The job was everything. The living space was just where he slept between shifts. His phone buzzed as he unlocked the door. Text from Marcus Reed. Heard about tomorrow's meeting with HM. Rough situation. Most of us know you did the right thing. Keep your head up. Most of us, Wright noted. Not all. Already the division was forming, the separation between those who would support him openly and those who would offer only private sympathy. Another text. Unknown number. You should have minded your business. Families deal with family matters. You've made a big mistake. There will be consequences. Wright deleted it without responding. blocked the number. He'd get more of those. Anonymous hostility from people who valued hierarchy over accountability. He tried to sleep, couldn't. His mind kept replaying the gallery scene. George's face, the fear poorly hidden behind royal training. Tom's fingers digging into the boy's arm. The calculation in Tom's eyes when Wright had interrupted. The veiled threats delivered with that smile. If Wright had walked past, ignored his instincts, told himself it wasn't his business, George would have endured that alone. And it would have happened again and again, until the child learned to accept it as normal, as the price of his position. That was the cost of silence. The price of not making waves when making waves was what the situation demanded. Wright had never been good at accepting unacceptable things quietly. His military service had taught him that sometimes protocol had to bend to protect what mattered. He'd made his choice in that gallery, and he'd make it again. Sleep eventually came, restless and broken. Morning arrived too quickly. Wright showered, dressed in his formal uniform, every detail perfect. The small armor of professional appearance. He reported to Wells's office at 8:30. The captain looked like he'd slept about as much as Wright had. "Ready?" Wells asked. "As I'll ever be, sir." They walked together through the palace. Staff they passed had different reactions. Some nodded support, others looked away quickly, suddenly interested in their phones or the paintings on the walls. One older guard Wright had worked with for 3 years, shared countless night shifts with, suddenly needed to check something in the opposite direction, rather than acknowledge him. It was starting already, the isolation Marsh had warned about. The Queen Consort's private sitting room was in the East Wing. Elegant, understated wealth. Morning light filtered through tall windows. Camilla sat in a chair positioned to take advantage of that light, wearing pale blue, pearls at her throat, the picture of gracious royalty carefully constructed. "Sergeant Wright," she said warmly. "Thank you for coming, please. Do sit down. Captain Wells, you as well. Can I offer you tea?" "No thank you, ma'am," Wright said, taking the offered seat. Wells remained standing slightly behind, a supportive presence. Camilla smiled, the expression not quite reaching her eyes. "I wanted to speak with you personally, because I understand there's been some distress over an incident involving my son. These things can spiral so quickly in palace life, can't they? I'm hoping we can clear this up together, come to a mutual understanding." Her tone was perfect, concerned but not accusatory, reasonable, the voice of someone seeking understanding, not confrontation. Wright used his prepared response. "Ma'am, I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this. I documented what I observed and stand by that account." "Of course you do, and I'm sure you genuinely believe you saw something concerning. Tom tells me he was simply chatting with George about family history, showing him the portrait collection. Perhaps his enthusiasm for the subject came across differently than he intended. These misunderstandings do happen." There it was, the subtle reframe. Tom's enthusiasm versus deliberate intimidation. Intent questioned, perceptions rendered subjective, the solid ground of fact turned into shifting sand of interpretation. "Ma'am, I observed Mr. Parker Bowles maintain physical contact with Prince George, despite the prince's clear attempts to disengage. I observed visible discomfort in Prince George's body language, consistent with distress. I heard verbal content that appeared designed to make the prince feel inferior regarding his family position." Camilla's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Visible discomfort. But these are children, Sergeant. They fidget. They become bored during adult conversations about history and tradition. I'm not certain that constitutes cause for the level of intervention that occurred. Prince George had visible marks on his arm afterward, ma'am. Princess Kate documented them. The prince himself confirmed that Mr. Parker Bowles's grip caused discomfort. Children bruise so easily, though." Camilla's voice remained calm, reasonable. "My own children were constantly covered in minor bruises from normal play, from everyday interactions. It's hardly evidence of anything sinister. And as for George's statement, well, children are impressionable. If an adult treats a normal interaction as if it's threatening, the child will naturally mirror that interpretation." Wells spoke up. "With respect, Your Majesty, Princess Kate's concern suggests this wasn't merely normal interaction, and Prince George's statement was given before Sergeant Wright's interpretation could have influenced him. The timeline doesn't support that theory. Camilla's gaze shifted to Wells, cooler now, the warm, concerned facade developing cracks. "Captain Wells, I'm sure you run a professional operation, but doesn't it concern you when guards begin interpreting family interactions through a lens of suspicion? Doesn't that create more problems than it solves?" "Ma'am, our job is to protect the royal family. All of them. When we observe behavior that suggests a threat to any family member's well-being, we're obligated to act, even when that action embarrasses family members and creates unnecessary conflict." She set her teacup down with precise care. "Tom is devastated by this. He was only trying to help George understand his heritage, his responsibilities, and now he's being treated like a criminal." Wright spoke carefully, using another prepared phrase. "Ma'am, I understand this creates difficulty, but I have great respect for the royal family, which is why I take my duty to protect them seriously. I cannot alter my statement to make the situation more comfortable." Camilla's expression shifted. The warmth disappeared entirely, replaced by something harder. "Prince George has mentioned that this wasn't an isolated incident, that Mr. Parker Bowles has made similar comments repeatedly over several months." "Has he?" Camilla's voice went flat. "And you believe an 11-year-old's interpretation of family dynamics over the word of a grown man who's part of this family?" "I believe the physical evidence. I believe my own observations. I believe the consistent pattern described by multiple witnesses." Camilla stood, the movement controlled but conveying dismissal. "I see. Captain Wells, is this really the standard we're maintaining in royal protection? Guards who prioritize their own judgment over the family's assessment of their own interactions? Who create scandals over nothing?" Wells straightened to his full height. "We're maintaining the standard of protecting the royal family from any threat, ma'am, including threats from individuals with access based on family connections." Sergeant Wright acted appropriately and professionally given what he observed. "He created a scandal. My son is now being treated like a criminal, barred from seeing his own nephew. This household is being torn apart because one guard decided a perfectly normal conversation was somehow dangerous." "Your Majesty," Wells said steadily, "Prince George's testimony and physical evidence support Sergeant Wright's intervention. This isn't a case of misinterpretation. Something happened that warranted protective action." Camilla's hands clenched briefly at her sides before she forced them to relax. "I can see we won't reach understanding today. I'll be speaking with my husband about the protocols governing royal protection. Clearly, some adjustments are needed regarding boundaries and appropriate oversight. We can't have guards making unilateral decisions that affect family relationships." They were being dismissed, the meeting over. Wright and Wells stood, nodded respectfully, and turned toward the door. "Sergeant Wright," Camilla said as they reached the threshold. They stopped, turned back. "I do hope you understand the position you've put yourself in. The loyalty this family extends to its staff is considerable, sustains careers, provides opportunities, but it can be withdrawn. I suggest you think very carefully about whether this particular hill is worth dying on." Wright met her eyes directly. "Ma'am, I've served in situations where hills were literally worth dying on, where people made the choice to risk everything for what was right. Protecting a child from someone who hurt him, that's not even a difficult calculation. It's the easiest decision I've made." He left before she could respond, Wells following quickly. In the corridor, Wells let out a long breath. "That went about as badly as it possibly could have. She tried to gaslight me, rewrite what happened, make me doubt what I saw with my own eyes. She did. And when that didn't work, she threatened you directly. You heard that, right? That wasn't subtle. She's going to use her influence to make your life difficult." "I understood that before I walked into the room, sir." Wells's radio crackled. He answered, listened, and his expression darkened considerably. "Understood. We're on our way now." He looked at Wright, his face grim. "Prince William wants to see us immediately. The Telegraph story published early. Online edition went live 20 minutes ago. Apparently, it's significantly worse than we anticipated." They moved quickly through the palace corridors. Staff whispered as they passed, the gossip network in full operation. By the time they reached William's office, Wright could feel the changed atmosphere settling over the building like fog. He'd become not just a person but a situation, a problem, someone at the center of conflict. William's private secretary led them in immediately. The prince stood by his desk, tablet in hand, his face set in controlled fury that Wright recognized from military leadership. The look of someone working very hard not to explode. "Have you seen this?" William turned the tablet around. The headline read, "Royal Guard accused of aggressive confrontation with Queen's family member. Questions raised about protection service, overreach and paranoia." Wright read quickly, his stomach sinking. The article was a masterclass in character assassination disguised as balanced reporting. Anonymous palace sources claimed Wright had physically blocked Tom from speaking with George, had aggressively confronted a family member during what witnesses described as a warm, educational interaction. It quoted unnamed security personnel expressing concern about increasingly paranoid behavior within royal protection, suggesting a climate of overreaction and excessive force. Tom Parker Bowles was quoted directly, his words carefully calibrated for maximum impact. "I was simply spending quality time with my nephew, sharing stories about our family's remarkable history. To be treated like some kind of threat in my own family's home was shocking and deeply hurtful. I worry about what this incident reveals about the current climate within the palace, whether guards are being trained to see danger where none exists, to view family interactions through a lens of suspicion that's both inappropriate and damaging." The article continued with speculation about Wright's background, suggesting without evidence that he might have brought military attitudes inappropriate for domestic royal protection into his current role. It mentioned his 6 years of service, but framed it as potentially problematic, implying that combat experience might make someone overly aggressive in peaceful situations. At the bottom, a poll. Should royal family members be subject to security restrictions during private family interactions? Early results showed 63% responding no. Wright finished reading. The distortions, the lies, the careful construction designed to destroy his credibility while maintaining plausible deniability against libel claims. It was expertly done. "This is character assassination," William said flatly. "Tom fed them this story to preempt the truth. Now when we respond with what actually happened, it looks like defensive damage control from our side." "Can we demand a retraction?" Wells asked. "Their legal team says everything is technically defensible. Anonymous sources properly attributed. Careful phrasing throughout. They didn't directly accuse Wright of wrongdoing, just raised questions about it. It's constructed specifically to avoid libel while destroying his reputation." William looked at Wright, and the anger in his expression was tempered with genuine regret. "I'm sorry. We should have anticipated this and gotten ahead of it. Issued our own statement first, controlled the narrative. Now you're the story instead of what Tom actually did to my son. What's our response plan, sir?" Wright kept his voice professional, though he could feel the walls closing in. Every person who read that article would form an opinion. Most would believe it. Rumors spread faster than corrections ever could. "We're issuing an immediate statement, not naming you specifically, but making absolutely clear that a royal protection officer acted appropriately in response to observed concerning behavior toward Prince George. That Princess Kate and I fully support the officer's professional judgment. That our son's well-being was and remains our absolute priority. That'll make the political situation worse for you, sir," Wright observed. "Make it look like you're at odds with the Queen Consort." "I don't care." William's voice was hard. "My son was hurt by someone who's now trying to destroy the man who protected him. I'm not going to stand by quietly, because speaking up is politically inconvenient." William set down the tablet with controlled force. "But I need you to understand fully what's coming, Sergeant. This story has momentum now. Other outlets will pick it up, add their own anonymous sources, their own speculation. Social media will explode with opinions from people who know nothing about what actually happened. You'll be photographed everywhere you go, followed by reporters. Every aspect of your life will be examined and probably distorted." "I understand, sir." "Do you? This isn't just career pressure or professional consequences. This is public exposure on a scale most people never experience. You'll be recognized on the street. People will have strong opinions about you. Some supportive, many hostile. Your family will be affected. Friends will be contacted for comment. Your privacy will essentially cease to exist. Wright absorbed this, the full implications settling in. He'd signed up to serve in the background, to protect the royal family from the shadows. Not to become a public figure himself, certainly not a controversial one. But there was no going back now. The story was out there, spreading through the digital ecosystem like wildfire. I know what I saw, sir. I know what I did was right. That has to be enough to sustain me through whatever comes next. William studied him for a long moment. You're either remarkably brave or remarkably stubborn. Probably both, sir. Usually are in my experience. A sharp knock at the door. Kate entered without waiting for acknowledgement, her expression furious in a way Wright had never seen. She looked at the tablet still displaying the article. I've seen it. It's absolutely disgusting. Tom is systematically trying to destroy this man's life and reputation for the crime of protecting our son. I'm handling the response, William said. We're handling it, Kate corrected firmly. I'm giving a statement as well, making unequivocally clear that I personally witnessed the aftermath, saw the marks on George's arm, heard his account, that I completely support Sergeant Wright's actions. And I'm calling Camilla directly. Kate, that might not be wise. It's absolutely necessary, William. She needs to hear from me directly, mother to mother. If she genuinely believes she can protect Tom by sacrificing a decent man who was doing his job, she's badly mistaken about how far I'm willing to go to protect our children. Kate's gaze shifted to Wright, her expression softening slightly. You have our complete and unwavering support, Sergeant. Whatever happens next, however ugly this gets, remember that. You did the right thing. We will not forget that. Thank you, ma'am. After more discussion of strategy and statements, Wells walked Wright back toward the security offices. Halfway there, they passed a group of household staff huddled near a window. The conversation stopped abruptly when Wright appeared, then resumed in urgent whispers after he passed. Ignore it, Wells muttered. Let them gossip. You know the truth. That's what matters. But Wright felt the isolation settling around him like a physical presence. The cost of standing up, the price of refusing to look away when looking away, would have been so much easier. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Hero or troublemaker. The jury's still out. But you've made very powerful enemies. Watch your back. Not everyone in the palace wants the truth to come out. Wright deleted the message. Blocked the number. Kept walking. One foot in front of the other. The basic mechanics of forward movement when everything else was chaos. What he didn't know yet was that at that very moment, Princess Anne was in a private meeting with King Charles. Documents spread on the table between them. Wright's detailed report, George's formal statement, medical photographs showing the bruising pattern on the boy's arm, Anne's own written observations about Tom's behavioral patterns over the past year. This isn't about one isolated incident, Charles, Anne was saying, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too much palace dysfunction to tolerate more. It's about a pattern of bullying behavior your wife has enabled and protected. Tom has been psychologically tormenting that child for months, making him feel less than, questioning his legitimacy, undermining his confidence. Someone finally had the courage to stop it, and now Tom is trying to destroy the man who intervened. Charles looked exhausted, age beyond his years in this moment. Camilla is absolutely adamant that Tom was misunderstood, that this guard overreacted to a normal family interaction. George has marks on his arm, Charles. Physical evidence. Your grandson was frightened enough to speak up, which we both know takes considerable courage for a child raised to never complain. Are you truly going to choose Camilla's son over your own grandson's documented well-being? The king was silent, staring at the photographs. The impossible position of trying to balance family loyalty with institutional responsibility, personal relationships with doing what was objectively right. The eternal struggle of leadership when personal and institutional interests violently collided. Anne leaned forward. Here's what you need to understand. William and Kate are prepared to make this a public battle if necessary. They will not sacrifice their son's safety or the guard who protected him for palace politics. If you try to sweep this under the carpet, if you let Camilla force Wright out to protect Tom, they will fight you, publicly if necessary. Are you threatening me with a family civil war? Charles asked quietly. I'm telling you the stakes. William is prepared to give a personal statement about what happened. Kate will do the same. They'll make this about accountability and child protection. And they'll win the public relations battle because they have the moral high ground and the physical evidence. Tom hurt a child. A guard stopped it. Everything else is noise. Anne tapped the medical photographs. The question you need to answer is simple. What kind of institution are you running? One where power and family connections let people abuse children without consequence? Or one where everyone, regardless of their relationships, is held accountable for their actions? The decision King Charles was about to make would determine not just Wright's fate and Tom's accountability, but the fundamental message about who mattered in this institution. Whether protecting children came before protecting powerful adults. Whether truth mattered more than political convenience. Time was running out to choose correctly, and everyone involved was about to discover just how much this decision would cost.